Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name's Taylor and today's reading vlog is going to be an April ARCs reading vlog. Super excited about this one. I did a March ARCs reading vlog this month as well. You all seem to be liking it and I had a lot of success and found some really great books in that vlog, so I figured I would continue on this series for this month. Fingers crossed you should be seeing this like one of the last days of March because two of these books come out April 1st. So I want to make sure that I give my reviews before they are released. But I have three really exciting books that I'm going to be reading today. I've got some fantasy and some horror arcs to read and review for y'all. So in this vlog, I will be reading Deadstream by Romasco-Moore. This one comes out April 1st. I'll be reading Gifted and Talented by Olivie, which is one of my most anticipated of the year. This one also comes out April 1st. And then I'll also be reading Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin. This one comes out April 22nd. I'm super excited to dive into this vlog and into this series. I will also have a part 2 of this vlog up because I have 3 more April arcs that I want to read and review for y'all. So this is part 1. We've got 2 April 1st releases and then one that's coming out towards the end of the month. We are going to be starting with Deadstream by Romasco-Moore, and this one is a YA horror. And why I was intrigued and excited to read this one is that it is comped to The Ring and it is technological horror. It has to deal with our main character who sees something horrific on a stream, a mysterious figure, and this mysterious figure spreads to other streamers and our main character as well. So it really does seem like a technological curse that is modernized. So instead of VHSs, we have it being spread through streamers. I'm really excited for this one because of the comparisons to The Ring. The Ring was one of the movies that got me into loving horror. So I am really excited to read this one. I love a good tech horror and I'm intrigued by the tech horror curse elements, in particular with that streaming aspect. So I'm gonna go get to reading this one and I will check back in later with a reading update. So I started Deadstream last night by Romasco-Moore, and I actually got about 60% of the way into this one before I realized I probably should put a pause on it and number 1, go to bed, but number 2, get on here and make an update before I finish it. This is a YA horror about a girl named Teresa, and she has severe agoraphobia, and she has not left her house since the tragic death of her friend about, I think, a year before the events of this book take place. So our main character, Teresa, she has a very small physical world. She's scared to leave her house. She's even scared to leave her bedroom most days. The way in which she finds community and is starting to find some healing after the death of her best friend is through online gaming and the community of online gamers and streamers. So she has a lot of streamer friends. She watches a lot of streamers and she also does some streaming herself. Now, one day she is watching a very popular streamer and something really scary happens. There's a glitch, at least that's what everyone thinks at first. There's a mysterious figure that appears on the stream of this streamer, and then things start going really creepily wrong for this streamer in the rest of their streams until something horrific happens on camera. Teresa is horrified at this, but she also feels like she wants to solve the mystery of what is going on with this streamer, so she dives into a rabbit hole of trying to figure out what is going on. Is it a very viral online prank? Is it something that's actually happening? Is the streamer actually in danger? And as she's doing that, this mysterious figure starts popping up in the streams of different streamers, and sometimes in like their gaming setup in the background or even in the games that they are playing. And Teresa Teresa may just be next if she doesn't figure out what is going on with this mystery. So this one feels very much, I can see the comparisons to The Ring because it's very much like a digital curse that is getting passed on from one viewer to the next. I also would say it really reminds me of that found footage movie that was done through, like, entirely through webcams, Unfriended. I feel like it has those vibes as well because this story is told primarily through third-person narration, but we also get a lot of interstitials of we're following the streams of different streamers, so that really feels like found footage. You're getting like the stream described to you as well as like the chat boxes in the corner as well. You also get things like websites and YouTube comment sections and Reddit threads. So in a lot of ways, it feels like you're going on a late night Reddit deep dive into a creepy unsolved mystery alongside Teresa. So that is really fun. This book is about 320 pages, but it feels a lot shorter just because of those elements. A lot of the pages, like the streaming setup and then the Reddit threads and YouTube comments, obviously they read a lot faster just because of the way they are formatted than just the third person narration. So it definitely doesn't feel like I've read 60% of the way through a 300-page book. It's definitely reading very fast, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. It was really fun to read it last night, like alone in the dark. This would honestly make a really good found footage movie. I feel like, you know, have it maybe do some editing so it's like just directly through everyone's streams and webcams. I think that could be really cool. That's the vibe that this book is giving off, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So I've got 40% more of the book left to read. I will say, if you're gonna pick this one up, there is something that is mentioned in the synopsis of this book that doesn't happen until about 55% of the way in. It's not necessarily a surprise when it happens because it's very much building up to something of the sort, but it still doesn't happen until about 55% of the way in. So if you pick this one up, just know the comp titles of It's the Ring but with streamers, and then go from there. But I am having a fun time with this one. I'm gonna go get to reading. Actually, I'll probably wait until tonight and finish it up in the dark because that was a fun spooky ambiance for me. So I'm gonna go get to reading. I'll check back in later when I finish this one. So I finished Deadstream and I had a lot of fun with it. I really liked the tech horror and the format of this one. I definitely think when you pick this up, like the physical version, I think the formatting is just gonna look really cool. Obviously, I tried to throw some clips in here on the B-roll. Like the formatting is obviously mostly there in the arc, but I just think like laid out on paper, it's gonna look so cool. I will say I do read e-arcs on my phone because I don't have an e-reader or anything like that, and while I think the finalized product of this book is going to look so cool, there was something really eerie about reading it on my phone, particularly towards the end of this one. I just thought that reading it on my phone screen, and I read it in night mode, so the screen is black, I can kind of see a little bit of my reflection, a little bit of the reflection of the room around me, which really added to some of the creep factor moments for this book. I just thought it was a lot of fun. I liked the tech horror aspect, definitely giving Ring with that type of technological curse. The formatting was really fun. It felt like the movie Unfriended in that way. This would make a really fun movie. Also kind of reminded me a little bit of the movie Pulse in a way as well. So I had a lot of fun with this one. I liked the tech aspects, and I also liked Teresa's journey because there was a lot of horror in here, but there was a really satisfying character arc as well. So I had a lot of fun. This comes out April 1st, and I would highly recommend y'all check this one out, maybe physically or an ebook. I mean, I think the audiobook will probably be great too, but I loved reading this one and getting to physically see all the YouTube comments, Reddit threads, like the streaming and the chat format, because I felt, especially reading it on my phone late at night, I felt like I was going down like deep diving Reddit holes with our main main characters, so I had a lot of fun with this one. If you like tech horror, I would definitely go ahead and give this one a go. It comes out April 1st. It had a really satisfying character arc and some creepy goosebumps inducing chills as well. So moving on to the next book in this vlog, we are picking up Gifted and Talented by Olivie Blake. This one is one of my most anticipated of the year. I really enjoy Olivie Blake's work, and this is about three siblings who come together after the death of their father. So Thea Wren, the brilliant CEO of Renfair Magitech and so-called father of modern technology, is dead. Any one of his three telepathically and electrokinetically gifted children would be a plausible inheritor to the Renfair throne, or at least so they like to think. So this is a commentary on like gifted and talented. One of the blurbs for this one is, on the pipeline of gifted kid to clinically depressed adult, nobody wins, but which Wren sibling will come out on top? So I'm really looking forward to this one. I'm gonna go get to reading and I will check back in later with the reading update. So I am now 20% of the way through Gifted and Talented, and I know these ARC vlogs are probably going to sound just a little bit repetitive in a certain aspect because the March ARC vlog, I said that The Buffalo Hunter was one of my most anticipated of the year. I've said it about this book, and I'm going to say it about a book in my next ARC vlog, but that's just because they are like my most anticipated releases. A lot of my favorite authors are coming out with books this year, and that's so exciting. But yeah, I noticed that when I was going through the footage already of this vlog, and I did want to point that out. I understand I got a lot of anticipated releases, and I was really lucky with just the way that requesting ARCs worked out. So yeah, I've been really anticipating this one. In particular, I've been anticipating a standalone by Olivie Blake. I really loved the Atlas 6, and it's one of my favorite books. It's definitely one of my favorite dark academia books. I liked the first book and second book in that series. I didn't love the way that the third book went, not because of the things that happened in that one, but just because the writing style and the pacing just felt different from the other two. So that one, it's not my favorite series. It's not a series that I would really readily recommend just because I really did not like how it concluded. But the first book remains like a book that really brought me into really needing to read everything that this author comes out with, and since then she's come out with a lot of standalones and I've really enjoyed them as well. Olivie Blake has such a unique writing style, and it really works well with the pretentiousness of the main characters. This is an author that I like to point to when I talk about how I don't need my characters to be likable, I just need them to be interesting, because the main characters in her books are usually very unlikable, very pretentious, there's a lot to deal with. They're all kind of dark academia adjacent, and she goes into a lot of themes of privilege and wealth and social status, and just all of those intersect with dark academia and academic pretentiousness. And I really like that this one is kind of following those same aspects. The writing style is so fun, but I know how it's not for everyone. This is a voice of God narration, and it's really reminding me a little bit of Lemony Snicket, because it's a voice of God narration where very occasionally voice of God will turn around to you, the reader, and give you little tidbits or give you like little snippets of the characters or its own opinion about the characters as well. So little tiny tangents, but mostly just focusing on these three siblings, and I'm liking that one. This one's definitely slow paced, and it's long too, I think. I think this one's almost 500 pages when it comes to the physical print version. So this one, you know, I don't know if it's the most accessible starting point to this author's work. I'd really recommend something like Le Petit Mort, which is a tiny novella, or even maybe Masters of Death, which I feel like is really good character building, but maybe not as pretentious as some of the other works in her catalog. But this one, we are following three siblings, Meredith, Arthur, and Ailey, and they are all all not great people. They're not very likable. They're very complex, and you can see that they have a lot going on. They have their own dramas and personal issues, professional issues, a lot of conflict within their own personal journeys. They are all Wren siblings. Their father was the person who started this huge startup of magic, technological magic, and they are all kind of in running to inherit his empire when he passes. So we're following these three siblings as right now, 20% of the way in, they have all just learned that their father has passed, and they are going back to their father's house to hear the will and the inheritance readings and, you know, start the funeral proceedings and all of that. So we follow Meredith. She's the oldest. She was a wonderkind. She dropped out of her Ivy League college though to pursue her own company, and she's got a lot of legal issues going on with that company. We also follow Arthur, who is a politician and has a lot of scandal going on in his life, in his personal life, and then also just with the fact that he ran as a very progressive candidate, and as the Voice of God narration points out, he's not progressive enough for the people who voted him in, but he's way too progressive for the rest of Congress, so he really feels like he's not getting anything done. And then Ailey was a professional ballerina who suffered a severe back injury and now can no longer dance, so she's left very unmoored. So we have all three of these siblings, and they are very privileged. They know that, they exploit it, they use it, but they're very engaging as well. So I can tell this is going to be a character study of three very unlikable characters, but they're very interesting to read about. And then also just the world building for this one is interesting. I almost wonder if some of Olivie Blake's stories like take place within the same world, because this is a world where magic exists and it's commodified like any other resource. It's almost like a superpowered electricity, at least the magic in which the public knows about. Now it seems like Ailey, the youngest, has her own sort of magical thing going on that we haven't figured out yet, but there's not a lot of setup or world building. You're thrown into this world kind of feeling like, expecting like you already know what's going on, which it is our real world, just with that magical element. So I am enjoying this one. It's definitely going to be slower paced, very slow, very character driven, and the characters are very unlikable so far, but I am very intrigued to keep on continuing. I cannot wait to get further into this one and kind of get the plot rolling, because like I mentioned, they have just found out their father has died and they're going back to hear the reading of the will and all of that, and that's where the story is going to really kick off. So I'm going to go get to reading some more of this book. I'll check back in later with another reading update. So I finished Gifted and Talented by Olivie Blake, and I did enjoy this one. I will say, first of all, this is one that you want to read a little bit slower than other books. Like Deadstream, for example, was so fun and so fast-paced that I really sped through it. This one is very different in terms of its tone, and at least for me, it's not a book that I could very easily speed through. It's one that I wanted to take my time with, and I'm really glad that I did. This is a very internal, character-driven plot. Well, we do have the plot of the father dying and then the three siblings coming together to hear his will. It is all about them really dealing with the loss of their parent, who they had really complex, very flawed, and very different relationships with him. Each sibling has a very different relationship with their father, so it's more so about them grappling with potentially inheriting not just money, but his legacy in terms of his company. And so we get a lot of wondering about the will. As someone who used to work a little bit in family law, this type of situation can really bring out the worst in even really close, tight-knit families, reading of wills, I mean, and inheritance and things like that. So these three siblings have very tense relationships, very interesting relationships with not only each other, but their father. So it's really a lot of internal reflection as these characters are dealing with grief and loss and the expectations of their father that was put upon them from a very young age, and recognizing and realizing that they don't necessarily have the catharsis or the relationship that they wanted with their father, and it's too late now, obviously, because he has now passed. So very, very internal. I did really like the narration style of this one. It really, really reminds me of A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. There's a lot of similarities, some of them a little bit more spoiler filled than others, but in a lot of ways it really reminds me of that style of narration, of the quirky voice of God that is maybe not the most reliable or withholds information at times, or just gives like fun little anecdotes at other times. So definitely enjoyable, and I would really highly recommend this for character-driven readers. I don't know if I would recommend this for people who are just getting into Olivie Blake. I don't know if this is a great starting point. If you're an Olivie Blake fan, I don't think you're going to be disappointed by this one. This is not my favorite of her works. I think if you are going to be trying an Olivie Blake, I think I've decided upon One for My Enemy is what I would recommend to try out, because that is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. So you know what you're going into in terms of plot structure. There is a clear plot structure, but then you also have the chance to sample her very interesting writing style and world building. So that is the one that I would recommend. But I did enjoy this one. I know it sounds really weird because in a lot of ways magic is kind of integral to this story. I mean, Thayer Wren, who's their father, he built this Magitech empire, and each of these siblings have some sort of magical ability that is revealed throughout this book. Honestly, this one, I felt like I maybe would have preferred it without the magic, which seems a little blasphemous to say, especially for me. I love fantasy, I love horror, and the horror that I tend to prefer is paranormal horror, or horror that has like some speculative elements that's not just true to life. So for me to say this might have been better if it didn't have magic, I think that is the case. I still really enjoyed this one, and I just thought the writing style was so lovely, but I will say it is like very pessimistic, and it does have that sort of pretentious feeling to it, which I don't mind. It's very academic and very clinical in language at times. I like that. I will say I'm not always in the mood for that. Again, bringing it back to the Lemony Snicket, that's not like a book series, even as a kid, that I could dive into at any point that I wanted. I had to be in a very specific mood for it. So this one, especially with like a lot of the big world issues that it's talking about, it's a book about grief, it's a book about loss and lost relationships, not just in terms of death, but just separating from people, loved ones, friends, even acquaintances, like losing connections and losing relationships, and just examining yourself and your own loss of potential, whether it's something that other people have put upon you or that you've put upon yourself. So this is not one I'd recommend if you're feeling like really sad and existential. I don't think it would put you in a good headspace, but I did really enjoy this, and I thought the writing was really beautiful. I can't wait to check out a physical copy of this book, because I believe it has illustrations throughout. That's usually the case with Olivie Blake's books, and I love the cover of this one. So I do hope when I eventually pick this one up, because I do own all of Olivie Blake's books except for the last book in the Atlas 6 series. I have that one on audio. I don't feel a need at the moment to buy it on physical, because that's like my least favorite book that I've read of hers. But other than that, I will eventually be acquiring this one to put on my shelves, and I can't wait to check out some of the artwork. This comes out April 1st, so if you're an Olivie Blake fan, definitely go check this out. It's a very classic Olivie Blake writing style. If you're looking for, I keep seeing a comp title, I have not watched this, but I've seen a lot of people say this is like Severance in terms of the character dynamics, complexities, maybe unlikable characters. So if you like those vibes but want just a little bit of magicality to it, you might really like this one as well. But I had a fun time with it, and now we are moving on to the third and final book of this vlog, and that is going to be Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin. I'm gonna go get to reading this one. I will check back in later with the reading update. am now 50% of the way through Eat the Ones You Love, and I'm enjoying it so far. It's definitely a mix of Little Shop of Horrors meets Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. We are following main character Shell, and at the very beginning of this book, Shell is at a very transitory period of her life. She has just broken up with her fiance. She has just quit her job and she's moved back home with her parents to try and find a new start for herself. She's doing some grocery shopping for her parents in a very decrepit mall. It's a mall that's seen much better days. And as she's walking through this mall, getting ready to do these errands for her parents and then go back home, she sees a sign in the doorway of a florist shop saying help needed. So she steps in, wants to see what that's all about. She does not have any sort of background in anything botanical or having to do with flowers, but this shop and the note really catches her interest. So she stops in, asks about the help needed sign, and meets Neve. And Neve is the shop owner, and the two of them really hit it off right immediately at once. And Shell is hired on and starts to really love this job. It's a completely different change of pace than what she was doing before, but she starts to really love floral arrangements and flowers and getting a green thumb of her own. And she'll discover in this book that Neve is actually harboring a secret. Neve and the mall are harboring a secret, a plant of sorts that has a very specific hunger. Now, this book is very interesting because, kind of like the last book I read for this vlog, it has a very unique narration style. It is actually narrated by the plant. This is definitely a very interesting narration choice because if the plant weren't narrating, we wouldn't really know that the plant was going to be a part of this story because it's very much in the background at this point. Shell has no idea about this plant and Neve's relationship with this plant. That's definitely going to change when I paused the story, but it's gonna go deeper into that in the second 50% of this book. But at this point in the story, Shell knows nothing. We know through the plant that the plant and Neve have a very long and interesting dynamic, interesting relationship, symbiotic, maybe something else relationship, and this plant relies on Neve to grow. And this plant is living in like this little arboretum, so this mall has seen better days. I do actually want to point out that this book takes place in Ireland. It's by an Irish author, and much like my experiences and just seeing malls in the US seems very similar to the commentary on indoor malls in Ireland as well, that they were once super busy, bustling centers, but now they've seen better days. The shops are dying one by one. I used to work at a place in a mall and watched this happen, that the mall used to be one of the biggest areas of commerce for a location, and just as time goes on, it's super common to see malls die off and see different stores start to leave the mall one by one. So I feel like now in the US, but it seems like in Ireland as well, if you go inside any indoor mall, they're either like, there are a lot of them that are abandoned, there are a lot of them that feel half abandoned because half of the stores are empty. So the setting of this one is so interesting because it is a mall that is half empty at all times. It feels like very dreamlike and it's rotting, and there's a lot of description about this mall kind of being turned over very slowly into nature because it's being slowly abandoned, even though there are still people working there and visiting there and going to these different shops. So it's very interesting seeing that commentary just about this place that used to be so packed and such a hub, and now we have this plant that is growing in this arboretum in the middle of this mall, and no one knows about this very monstrous sentient plant, and except for Neve, who is taking care of the plant, and the plant seems to be also taking care of her. And it's a very interesting narration style. I think some points in the narrative it works better than others. There's actually another character that we kind of follow because the plant is narrating, and then we've gotten a couple of emails from one character to another, which is interesting. I'm interested to see how that's going to kind of tie into the story later on, because it definitely ties ties in. It makes sense. It's not either of our two main characters that are writing these emails back and forth, but it is providing some context. So those are the only parts that are not narrated by this plant, and I'm intrigued. I like the abandoned mall aspect of it all, and not even an abandoned mall, but just the fact that this mall is slowly decaying. So far so good. It's definitely like botanical horror. I think it might verge a little bit on body horror in a way. In the next 50%, it's a sapphic horror, good time, and I'm gonna go get to reading. I will check back in later when I'm finished with it. Hey friends, I am back. It is the same day as before. I ended up finishing Eat the Ones You Love when I was on the treadmill getting my steps in today, and overall I thought this was a lot of fun. If you are looking for a sapphic Little Shop of Horrors retelling, and if you also like Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson, I think this would be a really fun springtime horror. This book definitely feels like a great spring horror, not only because of all of the botanical elements that take place within this one, but it is also set in the spring. This was definitely an interesting ride, and while I did enjoy this one overall, there were a couple of things that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but they by no means like made me not like this book. Just for me, there was a point of view that was very sparse and then really came in towards the end, and I don't know like how I enjoyed that integration. A little bit of the pacing, it just felt a little off, especially with that, because it was such a different perspective than the rest of the book, because the rest of the book is told in the plant's perspective. But I did enjoy like the way that it came together and the way everything came together at the end for the most part, but it just felt a little bit jarring with some of those perspective switches. This one also, I had mentioned in my last update, I thought it might lean a little bit into the body horror, so I had my fingers crossed for that a little bit, and this is just personal preference for me. I kind of wish this would have gone a little bit more horrific, a little bit more bloody gory, just a little bit, because I did like the sporer or botanical horror in this one, just with, especially with some of the comp titles that I've given, I wish it would have gone just a little bit further with the sentient plant that has a hunger for people a little bit more. So I do wish it kind of would have upped the ante just in terms of the horror elements. Definitely some creepy moments in here. I loved the mall as a liminal space. I just kind of wish it would have gotten a little more weird, a little more bizarre, and I would have felt like the stakes for our main characters would have felt higher. But overall, I thought this was a really engaging read, and if you like botanical horror and Spore, or honestly, even if you are not really a horror reader and you're trying to dip your toe into horror, I think this is a really solid like entry level into the genre. It feels very weird girl lit at times, especially with our main character Shell, as we are following her emotional journey and she's at a transitional period in her life. A lot of those character beats felt like a weird girl lit fic book. So if you like books like that and you're looking to get into something a little horrific, but that won't go totally like really graphically gruesome or anything like that, I think you could enjoy this. This comes out April 22nd, so definitely give it a try if you're looking for a very springy horror. But having finished that book, it is now time to wrap up this vlog. I had a really good time reading these anticipated arcs with all of you. I had a great time with all of these books. I think if I had to rank them, and I do want to point out, even though I am going to rank them really quickly right now, I didn't not like my experience reading any of these. I thought these were all solid horror or fantasy editions, but I think my least favorite would probably be Eat the Ones You Love, just because I was hoping it would get a little more gruesome, a little more gory, and like lean into the body horror. There were little elements little scenes that I liked that I wish would have been expanded upon. So I think this is probably like my least favorite, but that being said, I still had a very enjoyable time reading it. I think my second favorite, and maybe this one will change as I reflect on these books more and more as time goes by, but I think Gifted and Talented is going to be the next book, just because this is the one where my expectations were the highest, and this is an author that I have books that are in like my all-time favorite books. So this was not like my new favorite Olivie Blake, but I thought it was really strong. I liked it as a standalone. I thought it was a really fun time, especially if you're looking for something just a little bit pessimistic, kind of written in the Lemony Snicket, a series of unfortunate events sort of style. I thought this was great. You definitely have to be in the right frame of mind, at least I do, to read a story like this. It's very pessimistic and not one that you can fly through. It's definitely a book that you want to take your time and read it slowly and really absorb and just sit with all of the philosophical topics that are introduced in this one. But I did have a good time reading it. And then my favorite, which I'm really surprised by, is Deadstream by Romasco-Moore. I had a lot of fun reading this one, and I typically lean towards reading more adult than YA books. However, if a book is marketed as YA, it's not something that I automatically steer away from. And I just had a lot of fun with this book. It felt like a found footage movie in a lot of aspects. I think this would make a great movie adaptation, but it was a fun book to read. I loved the epistolary format of this one, where we have a main narrative, but we also have Reddit threads and YouTube comments and stream and chat and all of that. I liked the way this was written. It was a fun horror ride, and I did get genuinely like unnerved by scenes in this book. So that is going to be it for this vlog. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. Let me know if any of these books interest you, and if you'd want to read any of them. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any content from me. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!